Hey, everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. Hope you have good holidays. I don't normally do film reviews, and I only half watched this Wonder Woman in order to do a review. I kind of thought, maybe I'll just watch it. But my God, the new movie Wonder Woman 1984. It just came out. It came out both in theaters and online at the same time. And what a beautiful, festering pile of incomprehensible, late-stage, neoliberal, consumeristic, propagandistic garbage tripe wrapped up in more garbage and then reheated over a dumpster fire filled with the bodies of the Cold War era proxy wars. Ho, ho, holy shit! Happy holidays! And spoiler alert. There will be a lot of spoilers in this review, but can you really spoil something this bad? I doubt it. It'd be like taking a gallon of milk that's been sitting in the sun for 3 months outside and then taking a dump in it. That's not going to make a difference. So, like I said, I didn't plan to necessarily write a review of this movie, but it's rare that one of these superhero movies is available on the computer screen and in theaters at the same time. If I see any of these superhero movies, it's usually months later when I'm on an airplane or something. So it's rare that I see it at the same time. But also, these big Hollywood movies are important because they're important for indoctrinating our children and childlike adults, which is most American adults. So it's interesting to see what they are training children and adults to believe. And before I even get into this, don't give me any shit about me not liking this movie because it's about a strong woman and it's written and directed and made by strong women. I love plenty of movies that are about strong women, and I believe that men have largely destroyed this fucking planet. Because let's face it, we've been mostly in charge while we've been fucking it up. So I'm going to go 90%. I'll say 90% of the death and killing and rape and pillaging that happens inside this spaceship Earth is done by men. So I have no problem with films or TV making that point or creating strong female characters. That being said, holy fuck, what a bad movie. And I'm not even going to really dig in to the standard complaints that make this movie horrible that you can probably read on other reviews, such as it's an hour too long, it doesn't make any real sense, it's impressively not funny, Gal Gadot is a pretty terrible actress, and it's just rehashing the old tropes and jokes that we've already seen a million times. For example, were you aware that clothing in the 1980s in the United States was funny? Literally, they have a 20-minute scene that could have just had flashing across the screen. 1980s clothes were funny. I mean, they make fun of the fanny pack, which we've all been making fun of since 1992. And if it were a brilliant new fanny pack joke, then okay. But I mean, it's not. It's basically just them going, fanny packs are funny. But on top of that, the fanny pack has come back into style for hipsters and hipster wannabes and other people who dress like hipsters but say, don't call me a hipster. So it doesn't exactly make sense to make fun of something that is now popular again, especially when we already spent 2 decades making fun of it. The better joke is to make fun of how Americans call it a fanny pack, even though in the UK, the word fanny literally means vagina. So a fanny pack to them sounds like a horrible symptom of a really troublesome STD. Doc, I've got a fanny pack. And then the doctor would say, well, ma'am, have you been partaking in unprotected reverse cowgirl in a car park in Birmingham? That's probably how you got it. But I'm not going to spend this segment on how bad and hacky the jokes, the acting, the writing is. I'm going to get into the part that most reviewers won't get into. They probably largely won't dig into the politics of this film outside of the obvious stuff. On the political front, the reviewers will probably mention 2 or 3 things. 1, yay, women. 2, the bad guy is basically a stand-in for Donald Trump, and his greed is his undoing. And then number 3, they might mention that a Middle East oil oligarch in the film wishes to have his ancestral land back, which then creates a magical wall around the city because wishes come true. Don't ask. Blocking out millions. The wall blocks out millions of people and cuts off their water supply. Now, I imagine if that's mentioned in your regular reviews, they probably talk about how it represents Trump's wall and how it's clearly to remind Americans about, Trump's border wall is awful, it's a cruel idea. However, that the wall in the film could more appropriately serve as an analogy for Israel, which has built their own wall and cut off regular water and electricity to Palestinians. However, the guy who creates the wall in the movie, because he magically wishes for it, again, don't ask, he's Egyptian, which basically turns around the horrors done by Israel and places them on an Arab guy, which at best confuses the point and at worst actively tries to rewrite history to make Israel's crimes those of Arabs. And then, of course, the star of the film, Gal Gadot, is a former Israeli military, which everyone raised in Israel is former Israeli military because it's mandatory there. But she also strongly supports the crimes of Israel, as far as I've seen. So maybe she didn't get that this wall in her film destroying lives in Egypt is analogous to how Israel has treated the Palestinians. Who knows? Maybe she missed that part of the script. But either way, at one point, Wonder Woman nearly dies saving Arab children from military machinery that is about to accidentally run them over, which is slightly ironic because that scene is technically a former Israeli military soldier, actress, diving in front of tanks and MRAPs to save innocent, I guess, Egyptian children. Does anybody else find this odd? But let's move on because that was a small part of the film. However, military equipment is an important point. There were several scenes that highlight very large-scale military vehicles or planes or guns or spaceships. And when you see those things in a film, any film, not just this film, any film, anytime you see giant military weaponry, unless it's clearly done with CGI, which this clearly was not, it means that the film got help from the U.S. military industrial complex. Because in order to use that large equipment, the Pentagon requires final approval on the script. So it doesn't mean the military wrote the script, but it means they're fans. And you can imagine what that entails. It means you will not see true, harsh critique or almost any critique of our organized human murder machine because the Pentagon and the CIA would not approve of that. Moving on. One might assume that a movie titled Wonder Woman 1984, which is the title, might be calling back to the most famous work of art or cinema titled 1984, right? The famous novel by George Orwell, warning of a dystopian future in which mass surveillance and totalitarianism make life a fucking horror show. But no, there is exactly 0 references to our current state of mass surveillance in which everything we do, everything you do can be monitored. Everything you type, everything you, where you go can be tracked on your phone. There's 0 mentions, even though the evil villain in this film is a stand-in for Donald Trump. If you wanted to make a film placed in the 1980s that had nothing to do with Orwell's 1984, then maybe, just maybe, name it Wonder Woman 1985. Haha! There's an idea. And then you could still have all your fanny pack jokes. Anyway, don't expect anything about 1984. The end of the film does highlight the possible harms of mass communication by having the villain project himself into every household television in America and basically elicit greed from everyone. He's asking everyone to be greedy, and it has to do with a convoluted, awful plot where he needs everyone to wish things. Yes, it's as stupid as you're thinking it sounds right now. It's that stupid. However, this same mass television system is then used by Wonder Woman to reverse the greed and create giving and love from everyone across the country. She does this by telling them to stop wishing for things. What? So it doesn't mean, it doesn't seem that the film is really trying to make a clear point about the harm of television controlled by a totalitarian, i.e. corporate structure. Instead, it seems to be just highlighting the harm of greedy carnival barker con men. Now, you could think that making an entire plot around television villainously telling every American to desire things they don't need could be a beautiful attack on our capitalist system. Basically, every advertisement you see, and we see thousands a week if you count digital ads, but everyone is telling you to want something. This fills us with desires and fear and worries and needs, and about 99% of it is not stuff we truly need or should truly fear that much. So, in a different film, if this were a completely different film, you might think, this is great. This film is telling people about the harms of advertising and for-profit control of our desires. It's actually pointing out how insidious advertising is. But that would only be in a different film. This film makes it quite clear that it is not critiquing a vapid consumerist lifestyle. In fact, it basically says that empty, soulless consumerism is the way to be cool, i.e. loved. Diana, who is Wonder Woman's alter ego when she isn't dressed in vinyl and somehow using a truth lasso to fly through the clouds, yes, that happens through the clouds, which makes as much sense as using a battle axe to drive somewhere. Anyway, Diana is the coolest and hottest person in any room, in every room, and the hottest dressed. They make it aggressively clear. She has the hot clothing, the perfect lipstick, the lush hair with the utmost shine and bounce. We're even shown that apparently she even sleeps with perfect hair and makeup. Hashtag woke up like this. The other main woman, played by Kristen Wiig, is portrayed as uncool and a complete loser, just utterly loser-tastic, because she doesn't dress hot and doesn't know how to wear heels. I'm not kidding. The failure to wear heels appropriately is a major plot point. Wonder Woman's lover, Chris Pine, played by Chris Pine, also has to dress cool to be taken seriously. Kristen Bell then uses the magic wishing dongle to be cool like Diana, and she suddenly starts, did I say Kristen Bell? Kristen Wiig. Suddenly starts dressing hot, takes off her stupid glasses, and wears heels appropriately, which is when men and women finally start noticing her, laughing at her jokes, and caring that she exists. And yes, you probably remember this plot from every fucking 80s and 90s movie, including the 1980s Superman, where he's a fucking loser until he takes off his stupid glasses, right? No one gives a shit about Clark Kent. In the 1980s Superman, utter loser, stumbles through the office. People ignore him or make fun of him. That is his entire life until he takes stupid glasses off. And then I remember when I was a kid, Love Potion number 9 was another one. When Sandra Bullock is ugly and stupid and ignored and mocked. And then because she's wearing glasses and she has frizzy hair. But then she drinks the potion, which instantly makes her lose the glasses, and her hair gains the much sought-after shine and bounce. Honestly, how many movies does stupid, unfettered capitalist society need to get everyone to take off those dweeby glasses and put some shit in their hair? We've been doing this for fucking decades. Really, if aliens came here right now and all they knew was from watching movies, they would assume that the main problem with humanity was frizzy hair and clunky frames for our specs. Not that we're killing the fucking planet by doing things like buying new clothes every 8 seconds and pouring loads of fucking chemicals from our hair products into the rivers and oceans and atmosphere. No, none of that's an issue. Just that our curls aren't holding together appropriately. So the clear message, especially for young people, young girls and tweens, is learn to fucking dress hot or nobody will like you. I mean, that message isn't even subtle in this film. They basically remade a movie from the 1980s with many of the same trash consumerist principles as the 1980s. A lot of popular movies from the 80s had wealth and consumerism and being cool as the whole goal of the film. For example, in Back to the Future, Marty, the first one, just wants his family, and by the way, I love Back to the Future, don't get me wrong, but his goal is he wants his family to be cool and he wants to have money. That's kind of what he's wishing for at the beginning. After he fixes the past, his family suddenly has a bunch of money and he has the cool truck that he always wanted because they wanted, the producers wanted you to know that buying things is happiness. So Wonder Woman does a lot of the same, even while it tries to give the message that greed is bad. So either the writers had no fucking clue what points they were trying to give, or they had no clue that greed and consumerism and buying hot clothes are intertwined. They are not separate things. They are connected. Honestly, even if the here's how to be cool in capitalism weren't the repulsive plot of this film, it's been done through the entire 80s and 90s. Ironically, this movie is called Wonder Woman 1984, and the only way it would be considered interesting or unique is if it had been made in 1984. Moving on, the evil villain, the Donald Trump con man, is played by Pedro Pascal, ironically making him a Latino Donald Trump evil villain, which is quite a twist that seems unintentional other than to make sure that this is not a heavily pure white person movie. Pedro Pascal is a television oil con man, as if that's a thing. He somehow talks people from the TV, talks them into investing in oil that he doesn't actually have. So when he takes control of the wishing dongle or whatever the fuck that is, he makes it so all of his oil, all of his dry oil wells suddenly have tons of oil. So he immediately becomes wealthy and powerful, but of course he wants more because don't forget, greed is bad. Let's remember that. But weirdly, there's no actual commentary on oil being bad. Of course, we now know that the fossil fuels we burnt through the 80s, 90s, up till now, they're destroying us. They are killing our future, our planet, our way of life. So hindsight 2020, it would make sense to criticize the burning of fossil fuels in this movie. But alas, this movie is not titled Wonder Woman 2020. So their only critique is of wanting too much oil to be owned by one person, not the fact that we were destroying the planet as we burned that oil. In fact, the organization that has contributed to climate change and burned more fossil fuels than any other organization on planet Earth, the U.S. military-industrial complex, is largely glamorized in this film. Jets and flying are shown as magical things, and don't get me wrong, I don't have any problem with marveling at the wonder of human flight. I think that's great. But this is a military pilot. Chris Pine's character is a military pilot spending way too much time in this insanely long film, just ecstatic that there are jets, that they're in a jet. He sees a jet flying overhead, that he gets to fly a jet, that jets have been sent to outer space, blah, 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 blah. Thank God we have this new movie to show us that flying is cool. There is a brief plot point where the president of the United States wishes for more nuclear weapons, which then happens, which causes Russia to fire their nuclear weapons because they see all of America's popping up. And it would be easy to say, so when the Russians fire these, it's good. It's good to see they got in that dig at the Russians. You know, you're worried a whole movie could come out in present day and not have a good old dig at the Russians. And it would be easy to say, yeah, but there's a lot of digs against America, too, in this film. Our president is portrayed as a moron. He's kind of like a Ronald Reagan, I guess, because it was 1984. but he's portrayed as a moron who just wants nuclear weapons, which cause death and destruction. So, yes, there is a dig at that. But you see, in these American films, almost all of them, that have some Russia is evil plot point, the key is that Russia is shown as one thing. It's a monolith. America is shown as many things, right? The United States in this film includes Wonder Woman and Chris Pine and nerds and hot women and asshole men and other somewhat nicer, weirder men and black people and white people and pilots and homeless people. It's a multifaceted society. Russia, on the other hand, in this case, the Soviet Union, is one thing. It's evil, dastardly Russia. There are no good and bad Russians, wealthy Russians and poor Russians, loser Russians and popular Russians. It is just one thing. Evil, war-hungry, Russian, Kremlin, bad guy, evil people, something, vodka. Even the evil, villainous Arab world in this film now gets a slightly more multifaceted treatment in this film and many others than the Russians do. Point being, long story short, way shorter than this awful film. But through all this garbage, the final message is don't be greedy when you wish for things. The idea is don't be greedy is one I support. That idea. Don't be greedy. Okay, cool. I'm down with that. Don't be greedy. But here's the problem. After Wonder Woman tells everyone to love each other, everything in American society goes back to how it was, which is depicted as happy and stable. No more riots, no more death, no more nuclear war. It gives the impression that everything in America in 1984, flush with consumerist wealth and unfettered capitalism, everything was fine. Everything was going great until Latino Donald Trump showed up, which is bananas. It's a complete rewriting of history, just like it is when we idealize the 1950s as when America was great. Let's go back to when America was great. Well, it was great for a segment of the population. It was as it was in the 1980s. Not everyone was wealthy in the 80s. Not everyone was happy. There was still an American empire exploiting the world, assassinating foreign leaders, economic hardships brought down on other countries. There was still systemic racism in our country, a fascist police force, aggressive class war in which the rich owned the government and exploited the poor and middle class. All of that was going on. On top of that, the consumerism that this film glorifies was already killing the planet. We were learning through the 80s via advertising to buy stuff made by sweatshop laborers in Bangladesh and throw it out a week later and not care about the ramifications. Things were not great. And now we're paying the bill for that type of lifestyle that we lived through all those decades and continue to live. And perhaps worst of all, sexism was incredibly common in the 1980s. Women, which they show men being pigs, but women were stuck at home or being mistreated in the workplace. It was not just common, it was the norm in a lot of ways and accepted. So this so-called female empowerment film, at the end of the day, it glorifies and idealizes a time that included a lot of female subjugation and abuse. This reminds me of the incredibly problematic issues with Hamilton, the musical. It takes a time in which black people were literally property in America and then replaces the rich white forefathers with black actors performing a mostly black form of music and then passes it off as progress. But replacing the white slave owners with black actors does not change the history at all. Yes, we as viewers naturally feel that like it's empowering because we see people of color filling the stage and it feels good. It feels like progress. We're excited at how inclusive it is, but it is not progress. It's whitewashing the history that desperately needs nuance and truth and understanding to get past the whitewashing we've done for hundreds of years. There are a few mentions of slavery in Hamilton, but that's it. For example, in one sentence, Thomas Jefferson is mocked for being a slaver. But outside of that one sentence, Thomas Jefferson is basically a really cool and funny black guy. See any problems with that? And we viewers are left loving these comical forefather heroes because their inherent racism is no longer a problem because they are portrayed by people of color. How wonderful. Wonder Woman 1984 has several moments dealing with gross, sleazy men making comments about women or actively trying to grab them. But in general, you're left with a feeling that the 1980s was great because they made a female empowerment movie about it and women win the day. So all told, this is the standard liberal horseshit. If we all just behaved ourselves, then things are fine. It also tells us that basically no activism is required. There's no large-scale need for people to get active. There's no demand for a different world, a sustainable world, one with human rights and equality, one where you actually give up time in your day to fight for those things. No, all you need to do is appreciate your clothes, put some gel in your fucking hair, and behave yourself. That is what we're told creates a good world. Bullshit. That is what allows a horrific world. That is what allowed the rise of Donald Trump. That is what allowed the rise of Joe Biden and Jeff Bezos and all the other sociopaths who rule over everything. Is us going about our business while they exploit and extract everything from this world. Being nice to someone on the sidewalk is fine. You should, yes, but it will not result in the large-scale change we desperately need to survive the coming decades. Blindly following the path of capitalism and consumerism is a death spiral. And yet this trash heap of a movie, like so many others, says it's the answer. Hope that got to some points there. That's been your moment of clarity. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope I saved a lot of you some time, so you don't have to watch it yourself. Yeah, I think I got most of the points out there. Sometimes when I see something that's really fucking annoying, I have to do one of these because it's like taking an anger dump. You gotta get it out. You just gotta get it out. So, folks, I do these almost every day, except they've been lighter here during the holidays. But I do a moment of clarity almost every single weekday, except sometimes. And the holidays count as sometimes. So you can get them all the time at leecamp.com. And please share this with people. Let them know. I have a podcast called Government Secrets. Me and Graham Elwood. This past week, we dug into the censored, the redacted side of the stimulus bill, what you're not hearing about it in your mainstream media. We also dug into that time in American history where Americans were told to kill your neighbors if they tried to get in your nuclear bunker. I'm not kidding. You got to hear this story. But anyway, so look up Government Secrets. That's the name of the podcast. It's every week, and it's free on all your podcast platforms. We also have a video version that doesn't have video, but I just mean you can play it on YouTube. If you go to youtube.com/moment of clarity, you can watch or listen to Government Secrets on YouTube. All right. I also just did a new Redacted Tonight that's out this week. That's at youtube.com/redacted tonight. And what else? Oh, Rockfin. I have a new Rockfin channel, rokfin.com/Lee Camp. There's plenty of free content there as well as premium content. All right. Keep fighting, everybody. I'll see you soon.